Hi, everybody. Let's quickly go over the answers to the 6 questions at the bottom of the first DYRT test for the first half of A Doll's House. Question number 1. What are 2 examples of words or phrases which Torvald uses to address his wife? And what do these words or phrases tell us about their relationship? There's a bunch of different answers that you could have used for this. He calls her a squirrel. He calls her a skylark. He calls her little. He calls her a spendthrift. He calls her a featherbrain, etc. Every single one of these terms is designed to let the audience know that Torvald sees himself as the bigger person in the relationship, the person with the most power, and the person who is in charge of their relationship. Nora basically kind of plays into that role for her own reasons, for better or for worse. And you see that in the first half, but also in the second half of the play as well. Number 2, this is how does Nora try to help her friend Christine Lind, and how does this plan backfire? She tries to help her friend Christine by getting Torvald, her husband, to get Christine a job at the bank. Torvald was a lawyer before, and he has left the profession of lawyer, barrister, right, to become the manager of this bank. As the brand new manager, he gets to hire the new staff, and he says, "You're in luck. I've got a spot that has just opened up to Miss Lind. The spot, unfortunately, that has opened up used to belong to Nils Krogstad." Nora's plan backfires because Nils comes crawling to her, begging her to ask her husband to basically get him his job back, and she says, "I can't. I can't because Christine Lind is supposed to have that job." And then he's kind of forced to start blackmailing her because he has no other option if he wants to get his job back. What proof does Krogstad have of Nora's forgery, and how does this link Nora's and Krogstad's actions? Krogstad has the piece of paper that her father supposedly signed, but it was signed 3 days after he was dead, which obviously means, signed and dated 3 days after he was dead, which means that Nora forged the signature. Forgery is a punishable crime, a severe crime, and how this links Nora and Krogstad is not only did they commit the same crime, right? They both committed forgery. In their conversation, it's clear that both of them committed the crime of forgery for the same reason, which was to save their loved one. The difference is Krogstad's loved one, his wife, died. After that happens, everybody finds out about his forgery and his reputation is ruined, and that's why he's desperate to get his job back. Obviously, Torvald lived, but Nora is also in that same situation where if people find out about her forgery, her reputation and Torvald's reputation will become tarnished. Number 4. At the end of Act 1, why is Torvald so upset that Nora had planned to plead Krogstad's case, and what do you learn about Torvald by his reaction to Krogstad's former mistakes? So there are 2 answers for this one that you could have went with. The first answer is that Torvald's upset with Nora because she lied to him, and he does not like liars. The second answer that you could have went with is that Torvald mentions that he thinks that the act of lying poisons a household, right? And that Krogstad, by lying to his kids, is kind of poisoning them and turning them into these corrupt people. His concern about Krogstad doing that with his kids bleeds over into Nora doing that in their home, and somehow her lies infecting their children. So those are 2 answers you could have went with that. What do you learn about Torvald? One thing that you could have written down is that Torvald literally believes that if a parent lies, that somehow that's going to teach the child to also be a liar, right? And he kind of uses language that makes it sound like a disease, like an infection that gets passed from one person to the next. And the other thing that you learn about Torvald from his reaction is that Torvald is not a forgiving person. Or at least he does not forgive very easily. What kind of questions does Nora ask the nurse, Anne, about her own daughter as Act 2 opens? And why has Nora taken a sudden interest in Anne's daughter? Nora starts asking Anne about her daughter because Anne had to give up her daughter in order to work as Nora's nurse when Nora was a child. Nora is asking these questions because she is thinking of leaving her own children. right? The idea that Torvald has given to her about like her potentially poisoning and infecting her kids is starting to kind of cement in her head. And she's worried that she's a bad influence for the kids. So she's thinking of potentially leaving. So she starts asking these questions to kind of figure out whether or not her kids will be okay without her there. And as long as Anne is around, the idea is potentially they would be. And number 6, what is Miss Lind's misunderstanding about Nora's loan, and what led Miss Lind to this misunderstanding? Miss Lind believes, mistakenly, that it was Dr. Rank who gave Nora the money. What led to her to misunderstanding about this is that Nora was teasing her and said things like, well, maybe I got the money from a gentleman caller, right? Somebody who took an interest in her physically. Because she was playing this game with her, Miss Lind jumps to that conclusion, kind of rightfully so, jumps to that conclusion that it was Dr. Rank who did it. She also notices that Dr. Rank pays a lot more attention and knows a lot more about Nora than Nora's own husband, Torvald, from the interactions and from the way that they talk to one another. And so again, but to be clear, right, Dr. Rank did not give her the money. It was money that she earned on her own. In case you missed it, earlier in the play, Nora makes a comment about how last Christmas, Torvald makes a comment about how last Christmas Nora shut herself up in the bedroom to work on putting together a whole bunch of presents for hours on end. But then Nora says the cat got into the presents and ruined them all. Yeah, no, she was working to make off or to pay down that loan that she had to give back to Krogstad. She made up the story about the presents getting destroyed by the cat in order to cover her tracks. This is something Nora constantly does. I hope you found these answers to be helpful. Keep looking for these trends, right? Nora lying to cover her tracks. However, this idea potentially of like lying to save someone's life, and is there such thing as a good lie versus a bad lie, infecting a household, and what else? Again, those relationships and like similarities between Nora and Krogstad for sure, as well as the relationship between Miss Lind and Nora, right? This kind of sisterly, Miss Lind is the older and wiser sister, and Nora is kind of the younger sister, and that how that interplay happens. Again, I hope you found this helpful and enjoy the rest of the play.